I'm Stuart Cameron, welcome to Friday's Look at Rugby. And we look forward later in the show to the big local derby tomorrow between Melrose and Gala at the Greenyards, with Gala skipper George Graham and Melrose stalwart Graeme Dodds. Last week, of course, there was that extraordinary result between Melrose and Heriots, Melrose winning 44-43, but almost blowing a 22-point lead, conceding 3 late converted tries. And in fact, if it was points you were after in Melrose last weekend, there was a 48-48 draw involving Melrose Storm against Heriots A, and the Melrose ladies beat RHC Cougars 74-12. That's 269 points in just 3 games. Gala beat Boroughmuir with a bonus point win 32-6, while Hawick lost at home to Stirling County. In National League 1, Selkirk returned to the top of the table by defeating Aberdeen. Jed Forrest took GHA's unbeaten record to help them and Selkirk move up the table. Kelso lost at home to Dundee, while Peebles drew at Mar. Another highlight was in East League 2, where St Boswell's got their 27th win in a row at unbeaten Forrester, winning narrowly 16-10. Well, over the past few programmes, I've been chatting with Daily Record Rugby Show presenter David Ferguson about all aspects of rugby, and today we hear his thoughts on a possible return for Pro Rugby in the Borders.
I've always been a big advocate for that team. Everybody knows I campaigned a lot in the Scotsman for it not being taken away, and when it was, I said, well, if you're going to take it away, you've got to make sure you leave something for those youngsters to aspire to. You know, I still speak to kids in the street in the Borders, you know, whether it's Gala, Kelso, Melrose or wherever, who are wearing Crusaders tops, you know, or they're talking about the Super 15, and they know it inside out. They know the players, they know what they're watching. You don't get that anywhere else. Now, that kind of interest, fascination, knowledge, and the pressure that's here, you know, to be good at rugby. Now, we have to harness that better. You know, you go around the world and people say to you, you know, dear, I can't believe that you lost your Borders team. You know, to me, that's the heartland of Scottish rugby, and I would love to see it. It has to come back at some stage. We have to have a professional presence down here. But it'll be some time because we need that money. We're getting there now with more money coming in from BT. We need more money coming in for a Borders team to have it. And it's hard in the Borders because you really have to have all the Borders clubs coming together to make that happen. When we've had it in the past, and I accepted that Borders clubs turned their back on the Borders team to an extent, I believe the SRU were to blame for that because they didn't harness them. They didn't bring the clubs together and make them believe that they could be part of that. That was their big failing. But we need to have everybody in the Borders really wanting a Borders Pro team and pulling out the stops to make it happen. I don't see it happening next year or two. I'd like to see the clubs developing and getting stronger in the Borders and really challenging it as we've seen the last couple of seasons, and then we can start to talk about the Pro team coming back.
But it seems as if Aberdeen's going to be ahead of the Borders if it does happen.
Well, I mean, Aberdeen has a population. They talk about needing 500,000 people to sustain a professional sports team. I think the problem they'll have is Aberdeen are already trying to develop a football team. You know, we're trying to develop rugby in a city like Edinburgh where there are 2 big football teams. You're doing the same in Glasgow. I think that's a flaw. I think that's an error because you're competing for, in Scotland, you know, you've only so many sports fans. You're competing for the same sort of people. Rugby's different, but if you're going to develop pro rugby, you need to bring some of these general sports fans with you. Rugby fans on their own are not enough to sustain, you know, 2, 3, 4 pro teams. Aberdeen has the facility, it has the infrastructure, it has the support, but you know, that's still a long way to happening because there's still a lot of money needed there. There's nobody putting their hands in the pocket for £5 million a year, and that's ultimately the reason why we don't have one in the Borders either. We need that money, so it's still a bit way off yet.
Premiership against National League. Now, we've obviously seen the gulf that is there at the moment. We've got Hawick and we've got Melrose and we've got Gala obviously in the Premiership, and then we've got Selkirk and Jed Forrest and Peebles and Kelso in the National League. Is there such a big gap? I mean, not just in playing terms but off the pitch as well, the clubs wanting to go into the Premiership and not being able to afford it?
Yeah, you know, it is happening, and it's one of the arguments against professionalising the Premiership. You know, if we put more money into these clubs, they're just going to become further. They're going to move further away from the rest. And while this may be controversial, you know, having watched the Scottish game from top to bottom, we need that Premiership to get further ahead. We need it to go higher. And in the past, I've always argued that you still got to have relegation promotion, otherwise we don't have a game, and it becomes different. But there is a gap forming, and you can try and hold on to the Melrose and Galas and try and keep them closer to the second division, the National League, or the third in the Championship, or you can allow them to develop and invest in them and let them move more towards a pro game. It's a dilemma. I believe in the latter, that our pro game and our international game, ultimately where the money comes in and where the interest comes nationally and people make their mind up on where Scotland is in the world, is at that level. To develop that, we need to get a stronger club game. Now, I'd like to see a stronger club game at every level, but I fear that we'll need to work on the Premiership, get that up there. And if that means that actually it does create a bit of a gulf to the National League, then fair enough, that's the way it has to go. That's the way rugby has to go for me. And the National League, these clubs serve a big purpose in their communities. They're great rugby communities, great clubs, and they're doing lots to people into the game. But maybe that's their future, is the community aspect. They're small towns at the end of the day. Maybe they're not going to win the Scottish Championship again in the near future, unless something big happens in their area. But that's the modern game, I think, and that's the reality. We're not where we were 20, 30 years ago, where everybody could come through from Division 7 up to the top. That changed with professional rugby. It changed the whole picture of the game, particularly in Scotland. We've been slow to catch up other countries that have made those moves, made those changes. And I think, the Selkirks, the Kelsos, the Jeds, Peebles, these clubs are fantastic clubs and do a great job for their community and do a great job for Scottish rugby and spreading the word and spreading the gospel and bringing youth into the game. But they're different now to a Melrose and these clubs at the top, and people won't like me saying that, but we have to professionalise these clubs a bit, because at the moment we're letting down the young players that are coming through in our game, because the gap between the Premiership and club game and pro game is huge, and so a lot of them are struggling. We're not seeing them coming through as quick as they should. We're not seeing them coming through, some of them at all. And it's a real shame. We've got great talent in this country, the same as anywhere else, but we have to bring it through better.
And I must just ask you about the Irish rugby model. Ballymena, of course, played Hawick in a pre-season, and Hawick were quite intrigued to find out that Irish rugby have said, well, look, you're either amateur or you're professional. Can we see that model maybe being brought into Scottish rugby, or are we just watching with interest to see what happens in Ireland?
I don't think anybody needs to say it, or I don't think it will be said, but I think it'll happen. I think that's just going back to what I'm saying about community. We'll see a sort of community game, and some clubs realising where they are and recognising where they are, and they're a community club, they're doing the best for their area. But you look around at even football clubs in the borders, Stuart. You look around at Gala, Hoyt Royal Albert, Selkirk particularly this season, they pay a lot of money. They pay money to their players to sign on. They'll give them boot deals, they'll give them this, that and the other. So they're professional. Now nobody looks at them as being professional clubs, but they are, technically. So we'll have that in rugby. It's taken a long time for rugby to catch on and rugby to understand that, and we've seen St Boswell spending the money that they've spent on players. I don't like seeing players being paid money to go and play at the lower leagues when they've got the potential to be playing at the highest and helping. I hate seeing good talented Hawick players not playing for Hawick and helping that town and helping that club, but that's the reality of professional rugby. And I don't think we need to say that there's going to be an amateur split and a professional split. You can pay, you can't play. Once we've got a professional sport, I don't think you can stop people paying, but I think it'll happen. That we're already going down that road. We're already seeing that start to happen, where some clubs see themselves as amateur community, and I praise them for it. Those in the bottom leagues who want to pay £100 a week to a player, I think that's a waste of time, waste of money, and I don't see the benefit of that at all. And I have no understanding of why they do that, because that's not how you grow a club and grow kids and grow interest.
For the rest of the show, let's focus on tomorrow's matches, and in particular the big local derby between Gala and Melrose. I spoke yesterday with Melrose's Graeme Dodds, but first let's hear from Gala skipper George Graham and his assessment of his team's performances so far, leading the Premiership following another win last week against Boroughmuir.
We've obviously worked on the past couple of weeks just trying to put a full 80 together. We attacked pretty well. We've obviously still got a few mistakes that we need to iron out. We're happy, but I think there's a bit more to come from us. When it comes down to at the end of the season, then bonus points are always going to matter. I know it's a top four and it goes into a playoff, but you obviously want to get them, you want to stay at the top, and then bonus points are key. We pride ourselves on our defence, and for the last season especially, we weren't happy with it, and then we're not too happy with the start of the season, but to get no tries against a Boroughmuir outfit who, to be fair, they are a big set of boys and a good bunch of boys, so I think we've done really well. And then our defence last week against Accies wasn't up to scratch at all, so we've obviously put that right.
Great to have people like Rory Sutherland back.
Well, I don't really say much about him. You've seen how much ball he carried. He's a big lump of a man, and he can shift when he gets going. He's a good ball carrier. He brings a lot to the game, and his scrummaging is up there with some of the best. Gala and Melrose, it doesn't really come much bigger than that, especially when we're both sitting up near the top of the table. We're on a 5-game winning streak, I think, at the minute. They obviously lost the week before, won this week. Confidence will be up after putting 40 points on a team like Heriots. Our confidence is up after today. I think you'll see the best of both teams. Hopefully it'll be a good game to watch.
Graeme, how's the build-up going? That was a long session tonight.
A long session, yeah. We did a lot of video analysis before we went out, and got out there about 7:30, 8:15, and had a really, really sharp session. So looking forward to Saturday immensely.
Do you prepare any differently because it's Gala or any other Borders team?
Not at all, no. We look at who we're playing and try and pick out their weaknesses and prepare exactly the same. At the end of the day, it's a Premiership game. We need to get back on track, get back into cement our top 4 position, and that's all we're looking for on Saturday.
A lot of video analysis early on, of course, and plenty to watch from last weekend. Heriots 46-45, was it? Or 44-43, something
44,
like that?
43. A lot of good points, a lot of positives from last Saturday, but then the last 15 minutes was not good for us, and that's... we've got to sort that for Saturday, because Gala are as good a side, if not better, than Heriots. So if we come off the gas for the last 10 minutes against Gala, exactly the same will happen. So a lot of work-ons, which is not a bad thing preparing for a game like this. Obviously a lot of sort of form goes out the window. It's all about pride on Saturday and winning the game, and we take big footsteps towards that, after Saturday. But there's still a lot of work-ons for us as players.
Now in the team, some welcome additions. Bruce Colvin is back. Didn't work out for him in Darlington, but of course that's Melrose's gain.
Absolutely. Bruce came in, we trained Wednesday, Thursday this week with Scotland under 20 camp. A lot of guys away in that Tuesday night, so Bruce was back in last night and tonight, and he's raring to go. He's bulked up a bit. He's put about 11 kgs on since he's been away in New Zealand, and he's his usual tenacious self at training, and he's ready to go, and he can't wait to get back in the Melrose jersey.
Not a bad little scrum half roster, is it? Murdo McAndrew, Bruce Colvin and Tommy Wilson, who can't even get in the team this week.
Yeah, exactly. We've got 3 very, very strong scrum halves, and then Struan Hutchison as a sort of 4th choice just now, who's in an under-20 squad as well. So spoilt for choice in the 9 jersey, but it's only good for the club. You've got Murdo getting pushed the whole time now by Bruce, and then Tom will have a good reaction for the Storm, hopefully, and they'll be pushing each other on.
And Gala will be looking at the team as well, and looking at Joe Helps back in the side. That means points, doesn't it?
Yeah, a big boost for us. It's something we've probably been lacking. No disrespect to Lockie, he's not a goal kicker. He's a playmaker and a ball player. And with Millsy sort of coming in off the bench, we've had that coming on. But we know everybody knows what Joe Helps can do, and it's great to have him back in the 12 jersey. And
of course, in the front row, what a battle that's going to be. Ewan McQuillan facing his old team for the first time.
Yeah, we'll need to have his back a little bit. I mean, there'll be a few guys targeting him, and that's
surely
natural.
Surely not. That'll not happen, will it?
That's only natural. The guys come 4 miles down the road. It's happened before with John Dalziel and the Mark Moncriefs to John Amos. It's happened. Fraser Thompson. We had a joke before. The heat will be off Fraser Thompson a bit. They'll have forgotten about him because they're all thinking about Ewan McQuillan. So it's great as well. It adds a little bit of spice to the occasion.
Graeme Dodds, and before that, George Graham. Melrose v Gala is our featured match, of course, on Radio Borders Saturday Scoreboard Live tomorrow from 2 with Bruce Miller and Dale Clancy, your commentary team. Hawick are away at Rayburn Place playing Edinburgh Accies, who are yet to record a win this season despite being ahead late on in most of their games. Former Hawick coach Phil Leck is now in charge at Accies to add a little bit of extra interest to that match. In National League One, Selkirk visit GHA in the top-of-the-table clash, which could well turn out to be a season-defining game for the Suitors, who are playing some great rugby this season. Kelso and Jed are also on the road. Kelso make the trek up to Aberdeen, while Jed are at Mar. Peebles will host Dundee in their game at the Gites. Hawick YM have had a difficult start to the season in National League 3, and they'll be at home to Perthshire. In East League 1, 2 derbies for you. Berwick v Hawick Quins and Hawick Lundeen against Duns, while Langham visit Dalkeith. East League 2 sees St Boswell's at Leith and Earlston visit Pennycook. East League 3 has Gala YM away at Broughton and Walkerburn host Ross High. Super Scoreboard Live is on air from 2 o'clock tomorrow with Keith Clarkson, with the roundup at 5:45. Then on Sunday, the rugby news will go to air about 8:25 in the morning. I'll be back next Friday, but that's it for rugby for tonight.